Tonight, Fox 8 investigates why crime has become one of the city's most challenging problems.
A major player in the fight to stop the violence is criminal district court, where the alleged criminals could be locked up for their actions. However, Fox 8 found several repeat offenders who spent very little time in jail and instead ended up on the street, eventually arrested for murder. Natasha Robin has this special report on repeat offenders.
It's a scene that's become all too common in New Orleans, with a murder rate that's causing fear in communities across the city.
I think people are fed up, and I think people are still wondering why the city can't get a handle on this problem.
Fighting crime may be the greatest challenge.
But you got to take a hard look at repeat violent offenders in this community. You got to take a hard look at how many chances do people get.
Chief Ronald Serpez says one glance at a repeat offender's arrest record will show you that officers are getting them off of the street. But it's the amount of time alleged criminals are spending in jail that disturbs him.
For them, it's not the revolving door criminal justice, it's the drive-through window. They don't even got to get out their car. And yet they're out there committing new crimes, being accused of murders.
The people who commit the violent offenses, the most violent crimes, the murders, the armed robberies, you never really see those individuals come into the criminal justice system and their first offense is a murder.
DA Leon Canizero says most repeat offenders begin by first committing a minor offense.
It's at that time when the court has probably the best chance to turn someone around.
He says it's all about consequences for their actions. While it isn't uncommon for a judge to give first-time offenders a suspended sentence and place them on probation, it's what happens after that that makes all the difference.
There have got to be consequences if you don't follow the conditions of the probation.
Fox 8 found several cases where alleged repeat offenders seem to have fallen through the cracks at criminal district court. 22-year-old Jamal Harris is in jail now, booked with first-degree murder. He's accused of killing Ralph Bias in January in a brazen shooting on the interstate in the middle of rush hour traffic. His adult criminal history, though, began long before that. At 17 years old in November of '06, he was picked up for looting. The charges were refused by then DA Eddie Jordan. Back on the street, Harris was arrested only a few days later on drug possession. Harris pled guilty, and Judge Linda Van Davis gave him a 3-year suspended sentence, meaning he received no jail time. He was also given a 3-year probation. In May of '09, police arrested Harris for drugs again. The case bounced around several different sections of court and was eventually transferred to municipal court. His probation, though, was never revoked. Then, in December of '09, while on probation, police arrested Harris on a concealed weapons charge. Canizero chose to prosecute, but a jury found him not guilty. Judge Van Davis still chose not to revoke probation. Canizero says despite the not guilty verdict, the judge did have that option, which could have put him in jail.
You know, I know sometimes it gets difficult for people to want to put people in jail. It gets difficult sometimes to revoke probation, but we have to look at the consequences. We look at the consequences of us not necessarily being tough on people who are out there violating conditions of probation, people who are out there using narcotics, people who are out there using guns. The consequences are that people are dying.
Harris is now accused of the interstate murder, and if convicted, faces life in prison. One of his alleged accomplices in that case is Tyrone Davenport. Davenport's criminal history began 5 months after he turned 17. He was first arrested for the possession of cocaine. DA Eddie Jordan accepted the charges, but later failed to move forward with the case. In April of '08, police arrested Davenport for the possession of marijuana. 2 months later, he was picked up again for the same offense. In both cases, he pled guilty as charged. The judge gave him a 6-month suspended sentence, 6 months probation, and he was ordered to take drug tests. The DA says there are no records indicating Davenport ever took those tests.
We want to know whether the people that come into our office, whether they're on drugs or not. You can start to deal with the problem if you're aware of it, but if we don't utilize the drug testing. And this is another case in point where, again, something could have been done early on in this person's criminal history.
In August of '09, the NOPD picked up Davenport for resisting arrest, a concealed weapons charge, and having a gun near a school. The DA's office accepted the charges, but there are no court records to show what happened next. The case seems to have just gotten lost in the system.
These repeat offenders, by the very definition of the term repeat offender, are given breaks.
Police caught up with Davenport again in June of 2010 and arrested him for the possession of cocaine. The charges were accepted, and Davenport was released on his own recognizance. Court records do not show which judge granted him the bond. When it came time for his arraignment, Davenport didn't show up.
Well, how does that work? You're supposed to be released on your own recognizance so that you're not getting in trouble, yet you thumb your nose at the court and you get out, and then you go out and commit another crime. It's terribly frustrating to police officers.
To me, that's almost a slap in the face to the entire justice system.
Davenport remained on the street when Judge Laurie White left his bond in place. While awaiting his next court date, police were called out to the interstate, where they say Davenport, along with Harris and 2 other young men with criminal histories, shot and killed Ralph Bias.
Why do we have a community that has to tolerate break after break after break for someone who's demonstrated they don't care?
We reached out to all of the judges mentioned. Judge Laurie White was the only one who responded this afternoon, and she told me that after Tyrone Davenport missed his arraignment, he showed up to court a week later. She issued him drug tests. He tested positive for cocaine and marijuana and remained on the ROR bond. But she says he continued to take tests every week after that and tested negative. The judge says she chose to let him stay out on bond because he had only a non-violent prior conviction.
And the DA's point, his argument anyway, is that the operative word there is conviction in terms of what the judges are largely looking at.
That's right, and the message is he wants the judges to look at more than just convictions, look at the arrest, the entire criminal history of a person, because they have that right. They can look at the arrest, even if there was a not guilty verdict at some point. They know if that person was arrested for things like drugs and guns.